Know yourself. Know the good and the not so good. Better yet, know the two divided parts within you. That which is part of the godly soul, that is holy, and that which is part of the animal soul, which is driven by self-directed, self-absorbed desires, seeking pleasure as an end in itself, seeking comfort as an end in itself, rather than connection. Know both parts of us is essential in order to live life appropriately, to live life the way God wants us to live life, to accomplish that which you were set here to accomplish. Without having a firm awareness and knowledge of the, shall we call it, the two players, the two combatants, the two complete beings that we have within us, then we will never truly reach our potential. Now, it could be when it comes to business, if you're just motivated by your animal soul, you'll knock it out of the park, but you'll remain an animal, stepping on people, not being there for people, just being there for yourself so you could make good for yourself. And maybe your family and your loved ones, but it's all self-directed. But that's not success in life. Success in life is how well are you fulfilling the purpose that you were created for, that God created you, that God needs you for. So the beginning of that, the beginning of all that, is to know who you are on the inside. The two parts. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We begin chapter 2. Chapter 2 starts with knowing who we are, the godly part of us, the godly soul. The Alter Rebbe begins, he quotes a medrash that is as follows: "Hanefesh hashenis b'Yisrael hi chilek elakal mimal." The second and uniquely Jewish soul, is a part of God above. Mamish. The Alter Rebbe adds one word to it, mamish, literally. In other words, not figuratively, but literally. And if I've said in the past, mamish could be the one word that kind of exemplifies or gives us an understanding of what Tanya is all about. Literally, real. It's not a figure of speech, it's real. So now what are we talking about? What's real? That the second soul is a part of God. Now where do we get this concept from? Well, we get it from Adam and the way he was created. We see that in Chumash, in Bereshis, in the story of creation. It says there that he blew into his nostrils a soul of life. V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. Right? And the metaphor of blowing, the God blew, I mean, God has to blow. It was difficult, it was challenging. No, it's a metaphor. Blowing it takes from a deep place. We always have to breathe. But the breath to speak is an external breath. It doesn't take much effort. It doesn't come from as deep a place as when you blow, like the balloons for your daughter's birthday, which you probably don't do anymore. Right? So that's the metaphor. Meaning the inwardness, it comes from a deep place, from the divine, from God. Allegorically, this is also referred to as that the Jewish soul, this divine soul that we're talking about, comes from machshava, thought. As opposed to everything else in creation comes from dibur, speech. Speech compared to thought is external. What causes speech is thought. What's the inner dimension of what you come to speak is what you think. Got to think it before you speak it. And sometimes you don't think it too well, but there was some form of thought. Some form of thought. In any case, we also see that in reference to the Jewish nation, it says, B'ni B'chor Israel, Israel, my firstborn son, in the book of Exodus. Referring to the individual Jew, it says, you are children unto God, your Lord. Right? Now, what is in the reference to non-Jews? We're not going to discuss this right now. We did discuss it in the previous class to some degree. We will discuss it once we have a better understanding or grasping of this idea first, and then we'll come to that, right? But there, similarity in the concept of goodness versus evil, light versus dark. So there are some similarities, but there's something unique here about the Jewish soul. Okay. So the fact that we use a term of a child of God is a metaphor, again, to understand. Let's understand it, this metaphor. So further it says that we come from God's divine wisdom, Chachma. And God's divine wisdom is one with Him. My wisdom is not perfect unity with me. It's a part of me. It's an aspect of me, but it's not one with me, because I may not always be full of wisdom. Right? But God, He's one with it, as Maimonides tells us. Now, this power of Chokhmah is the nullity of the soul, as Chokhmah is wisdom that is the receptacle for the Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God. So that's where the soul comes from. Truth is, everything comes from there, but this is the internal aspect of it, as opposed to the external aspect. And this idea that God is one and united with His wisdom, in a footnote, the Alter Rebbe says, is something that the Kabbalists explain and agree with, even though there's some debate about it in the Rishonim, in the earlier philosophers of the Maharal versus the Rambam, Maimonides. And in any case, when God, the finite aspect of the divine that is expressed in 10 divine attributes, that finite aspect of godliness is one with God. And when other commentators are speaking about that God is beyond wisdom, wisdom is not something that can define even God. He's beyond it, even if it's not a wisdom like ours. It's still wisdom, and God is infinitely removed from that. That's true when we speak about God. he is. But when we speak about godliness, that emanation of God, the limitations of God, so then, yes, there is a concept of wisdom. And that wisdom of God is nonetheless perfectly united in one with him. Now, there's a difficulty that arises. If the Jewish soul comes from this level of chachma, of divine wisdom, then how is it not that all Jewish souls would be one and the same quality of soul? But yet we see that Moses, his quality of soul is much greater than the people in his generation. And likewise, we see from generation to generation, there can be a distinction in souls. And within every generation, you have loftier souls and you have, lower souls. You have souls that can be like the heart, the brain, and you have souls that are like the fingernail and the foot. How can that be? So again, we go back to the metaphor of a child coming from a parent. And here in the metaphor, we're going to use the Father, right? Our Father in heaven would be the metaphor, and the metaphor is Chachma. Chachma is the seed, right? Chachma is the semen, the seed, that there's an entirety of the child in that seed. But yet, it doesn't finish there, of course, as we know. It has to go through 9 months of gestation in the womb of the mother, and there develops that seed, that semen, which is chachma, right? Is what man gives, the seed, to the creation of the child. The woman now takes that, seed and now develops it. That's the level of bina, of building it. And now from that, what you have in the end is from that semen, that seed, you have a fully developed child that is totally bound up to the original semen, which the original semen the divine wisdom of God. So meaning that no matter what level, whether that child now, which is now the fulcrum of the Jewish people, you'll have those that come from the divine wisdom that are the brain of the child, the heart of the child, the right hand of the child, the left foot, and even a nail of the child. Every single one of them are ultimately bound up to their source in the divine wisdom of God, the thought of God in that where the child came from, which, by the way, the semen comes from the thought, even in human engagement, also comes from the thought, as we'll see soon, this concept. So no matter if that soul is a lofty soul, like Moses, or an illiterate and distant soul, so to speak, distant in the sense, in their awareness of godliness, their connection to godliness, but they're rooted, that nail, right, that fingernail, as the brain comes from the same seed, from the same semen of the Father, of the divine wisdom of God, it comes from the same place. It just evolved differently. Because the full being has all of the Jewish people, that they are one being, as it were. We have different purposes in the functionality. But are we one being? Yes. Are we bound up in our source in the divine equally? Yes. How do we evolve? Differently, because we all have a different function. The Jew that needs to be a finger will be the finger, right? And we'll give the thumbs up. We'll do the functionality that what a finger needs to be, what the thumb needs to be, for example. The one that is the brain, which are the sages of the Jewish people, the leaders, the holy ones of the Jewish people, the brains, if you will have their function. But we all are rooted in the same way. In the original thought, right, which metaphorically, thought is more internal than speech. And metaphorically is God blowing in, meaning from the depth of his being, of God, the inner aspect of the divine, into Adam and creating, giving him life. That's the godly soul that we're talking about. Now the metaphor goes further. Now that we have this full body of the Jewish people, and they're all bound up with each other, just as, a person is one complete being, one body. Of course, if there's pain in the finger, it affects the entire body. There's something lacking in one part of the Jewish people, and it affects the entirety of the Jewish people. Right? Which maybe we'll get to soon. That idea. But now, what happens is, in this body, that the brain is metaphorically the sages of Israel, the Rabbi, the Alter Rebbe in his generation, the Rebbe in our generation. The rest of the body is pending on it to, as it sends the messages to the rest of the body, it senses everything that goes on in the body through the brain. It is the life force of the body. So that means that the sage, the Rebbe, is that life force that connects the rest of the body of the Jewish people. Even somebody who is willfully sins and rebels against that Torah sage still needs to get life force from the brain, right? If there's something that is wrong with the finger, it still needs to get life, it still needs to get messages, and everything is pending on the brain, meaning on the holy righteous ones, the sages. So they're getting it, but they're not getting it direct, klipa, and that's why there's a malfunction in the body of the Jewish people. In conclusion of chapter 2, heavy-duty chapter, the Alter Rebbe says, with this then we can understand what the Zohar says, that a person should conduct themselves in a holy manner during sexual union, which is not the way maybe some people do, and therefore what they have created in their child is a garment that is not a holy garment, because the union wasn't holy. What does that mean? It means like this. So he explains. There's a difference between the garment of the soul and the soul itself. The soul itself comes direct from God, and there's nothing you can do about that. Therefore, sometimes you find a lofty soul that can come to a crude individual, to crude parents, a lofty soul. What the parents give to the soul is what we call the garment, the lavush of the soul. Now, the lavush, the garment, is going to be, eventually the way they think, speak, and act, right? That's what garments are. But they give, and it doesn't mean specifically here the way they think, speak, and act, but it will give, of course, the character qualities, right? The coarseness, if it's coarseness, or the refinement of the parent. How? Because the way you act during sexual union will determine what you are giving to your child, which is phenomenal. In other words, yes, God even exists in the bedroom. As a matter of fact, in a certain way, he exists there and is to be found there, even more so. Whereas every other faith and religion, sexuality is either is at best a necessary evil, right? In Judaism, in Chassidus, it is a holy engagement. It's holy. It's like the holy of holies, actually our sages say. But holy of holies means the high priest only goes there on Yom Kippur, and if he has the wrong thought, he didn't last. He has the wrong thoughts. So likewise, in engagement, the way we engage, right, will determine what kind of garment that we create for the child. So it's not a bad thing, it's a holy thing, right? And holy means that you engage in it not merely for you don't engage for your mere pleasure. It's actually the husband's conjugal duty to give that pleasure to his wife. How does that kind of cold conceit by rape? So we had a lot here. But that's a conclusion of chapter 2. Take a moment for some questions. Two question marks before you ask a question, please, so I can know. Why is God's wisdom not one with us? Because we got to be one with Him. Okay, Rachel has on Instagram. Let's see. Could it be possible that if one from among Israel holds back in doing a mitzvah, that they are holding back and delaying the coming of Mashiach? It's possible, yes. Yeah. Is it possible that the righteous child can be born from one righteous parent and one wicked parent? If the righteous parent's level of righteousness is higher than that of the other parents' lack? Yes. I mean, these are all things beyond us, let's be quite frank. Yeah, these are things beyond us. Why are the wicked children born to Yitzchak and Abraham? So, they both were born with lofty souls, Ishmael and Esau, but they chose otherwise. We're talking about something about the loftiness of a soul. Doesn't mean that means you act that way. Just because you have a lofty soul doesn't mean you could be very wicked. Because loftiness of the soul doesn't mean your choice was taken away. Choice is never taken away. You're not living up to the loftiness of your soul. That's why Yitzchak wanted to bless Esau with the firstborn blessings. He had a lofty soul. And he felt by giving him the blessings, he would realize his potential. In the end, it was wrong. Excellent question. So simply you'll have to, I don't see the question. Sorry, you have to repost it. The effect of the child. So Gilise is asking about if there's rape and the effect of the child. I mean, it's not about a blame game over here. It's not blame game. Okay? The rapist is to blame because obviously he has, not lofty intentions, to say the least. Evil intentions, obviously. Right? So, why is that child to blame? Not a blame. It's a fact. Right? So these are facts. This is what happens. It's like, a storm comes and a tsunami comes and one person got, hit by the storm and the other one not. It's not a blame. These are, things that happen that ultimately there's a godly purpose for it. But, I don't want to get off on that. Is Torah akin to the soul of the Jewish people? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Laurie. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Beautiful.